Good to be with you on another Tuesday. It's been raining for days and days, but it's been a nice day today. Our first viewer says, I've totally immersed myself with your website, video chats, DVDs, and so on with a new hunger and eagerness to bring more real love into my life. And with that approach, you will. You're looking to get more love into your life, which will then change you. Whereas so many people are looking to get more real love or more love from a particular person. I've recently coached a man whose entire goal was to get more from his girlfriend. And no matter what I said or anybody else said, all he could say was, look what she didn't do for me. Look how I want more. And at no point ever made it his goal to do what you just said, which is to bring more real love into his life from whatever source, immersing himself in the principles. All he could say was, me, and me, and why doesn't she give me more? Well, you can imagine how that went. He got more and more miserable, and she left him. So it's all about what can we do to improve ourselves. You continue. I have a good friend in real love, and I talk to her every day or two. That has made a big difference in my life. Can't emphasize enough how important that is. I've known many people who learn the principles fairly well. They understand them, they can speak them, they can teach them, but they don't have what you're talking about here, and that is they don't have somebody that they can practice it with. Practice feeling loved by, as they tell the truth about themselves, and practice loving. So critical that you have this. You continue. I've plunged full force into dating, and I've met or been on dates with 4 different guys in the past 6 weeks, which is a lot for an introvert like myself. And you're approaching dating. If you're going to date, as opposed to piddling, dating a little here, a little there. It's really, the dating process is a long job interview. You're trying to find out whether somebody can be a compatible, loving partner with you. How are you going to find that out except through experience? And even if it turns out that they're not, you get to practice being truthful. You get to practice being loving. You practice looking for the signs of truth-telling and loving in others. Invaluable. Dating is a great experiment in practicing love with other people. Mohandas Gandhi said that life is just one unending series of experiments. Exactly what dating is. Anyway, you say, I keep repeating this phrase from one of your talks. Never expect real love from any one person. This helps me so much. And this makes dating a breeze if people would remember just that. You're looking to find out who's capable of loving you, as opposed to expecting love from any one person, or worse, although they kind of go hand in hand, manipulating people to love you. We try to create relationships with people who are incapable of an unconditionally loving relationship. So why would you want to manipulate somebody like that to give you more? The more they give you, all you get is more deceived. And then you fall deeper and deeper into a mess. Quicksand, tar pit, it's awful. Then you continue. I'm already having a problem with this one guy that I've been seeing. We've been on 2 long dates and had several phone conversations. During our phone conversations, it's obvious that he shows little or no concern for my happiness. Instead, he sees the phone as a way to vent or let out all of his thoughts happening of his whole life. What am I, a doormat? He called again tonight and I didn't have much to say, so I ended up listening to him talk for 40 minutes. It was the 100% opposite of an intimate conversation. This guy is monologue central. Okay, I get what he did. Starved for attention, and if he's manipulating you to get it, which is what he's doing with these monologues, he wouldn't feel it even if you gave it to him. But notice that you're saying, he did this, he went on and on, well, honey, you were there. It's like the women who say, oh, what happened? I'm pregnant. Well, you were there. We tend to participate in dysfunctional relationships. And he goes on and on and on because you let him. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do that intentionally. I'm not suggesting that you have intentionally contributed to a dysfunctional conversation, but if somebody goes on and you're not liking it, then, and you don't say anything, then you're lying. And you're purchasing his approval by allowing it to continue. So you're right in there as a partner in this. You continue. Now I'm concerned about how I'll communicate to him that I'm less interested in him than he is in me. We have a third date planned for this Saturday, and I don't want to cancel, but I'm going into the date with much reservation. You're afraid to be truthful to this guy. You're afraid that then he won't like you. You're afraid that you might then be alone. You're afraid you might offend him. You're afraid you'll look stupid. All kinds of fears, which is why you haven't interrupted him on these long monologues. You don't want to look harsh. Maybe you don't even know the words to say to interrupt a long monologue. But look at all the fears, and you're paralyzed by it. I like him less than he likes me. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who's selfish like this. I'm just paraphrasing you. And yet he asks you out for a third date after this, and you're going, okay, despite many reservations. Well, unless you run this third date very differently than the previous two, it's very likely you'll have a fourth date, just like the first three. At some point, remember, you're just gathering information. This isn't a lifetime partner that you have to learn to accept. Well, sure, you can accept him where he is, but you don't have to accept him as a partner. We're trying to figure out, could they participate in an unconditionally loving relationship? And if they can't, or at least it's our assessment that they can't, we move on. So what matters is, what is the right thing to do, as opposed to how you're making decisions, which is, what will be the cost of my decision? Will I be alone? Will his feelings be hurt? That's not how you make decisions. You decide the right thing, then you live with the consequences. So this guy scares you. So how are you going to figure this out with him? I would talk to him about what you're learning. I would say, I've been reading these books, I've been participating in these conference calls, video chats, whatever, and they've made a big difference to my life. And if you say that, and then he just ignores you and keeps talking, well, sweetie, what kind of clue do you need that this guy isn't interested in you? What if he listens to you for just, a minute or two, and then he launches back into his monologue? You raise your hand. You go, there's more I'd like to say. If he's annoyed by that, good grief, why would you want to be with somebody who speaks more than you at a ratio of 10 to 1? You might even say to him, because you have to remember, many people are socially disabled, crippled virtually. And so you might say, I don't know if you know, but when we're together, now if you say, I don't like it when you, people can't hear that. But if you say, I don't know if you know, but when we talk, you talk for 10 minutes for every minute that I'm speaking. It's as though who I am and what I'm saying isn't really of interest to you. And if he's offended by that, well, aren't you done? Didn't you learn what you needed to learn? Whereas if he says, well, nobody's ever told me that before. Really? Well, that's what you do. And then you say, now, if you're interested, you don't have to be. When you interrupt me or you take over the conversation, I'll raise my hand again and say, you're doing it now. You do not have to change this, you tell him. I am not trying to change you. I'm just telling you that I'm looking to be a full partner in a relationship. And when you go on for 40 minutes at a time, I don't feel like a full partner. So you're just describing what you're interested in. You're describing what you're learning. You describe what he's doing if it's not compatible with a loving relationship. And then you see what he does. If he goes, well, I didn't mean to, and gets all defensive, do you want to do that for the next 20 years? It gets kind of boring, actually. And that's how you find out. So give him a chance, sure, but you can't give him a chance just by passively sitting there and allowing him to do what he's always done. He's not going to learn anything from that, and neither will you. Here's a viewer who says, I teach piano, and one thing I struggle with is becoming irritated when students, most of them are young children and teens, don't practice. Having taken piano lessons for years, I know that phenomenon actually from both sides of the fence, because I've also taught piano. In lessons, I can tell that they're apathetic, and I've been looking for ways to change this. I've always believed that if students are unmotivated, the responsibility to change rests on the teacher, not the student. But I struggle with knowing exactly what action to take. And it's true, most of the time, as I have spoken with teachers, whether it's teachers of piano or whatever level of school, most of the time, if you've got kids who are consistently not interested, it's usually because the teacher is consistently not interesting. They're kids. There's no way they could see the end result of practicing. It's like telling a kid, if you keep the law, you'll grow to be a responsible and upstanding citizen. That doesn't mean anything to an 8-year-old. Nothing. He'd rather, shoplift candy from Walmart. We have to make the lessons interesting and practical, fun, engaging, or they're just going to slide right by, and we're going to end up saying what most teachers do, which is, well, those dang kids. Well, you can do that, but if you're waiting for all the children of the world to suddenly become responsible, fascinated, fired up by learning for the process itself, you're going to be waiting for a long time. You continue, it's more clear to me what actions to avoid. For instance, I don't use stickers, prizes, and other motivational tools as rewards, and I avoid using artificial, meaningless praise, like good work, nice job, and so on, since I know that these strategies tend to take away from the genuine enjoyment of the activity and work very little in the long term. And you're quite right. Many studies have now shown that artificial praise will actually interfere with success, actually interfere with the student's intrinsic motivation to do a thing just because it's right, fun, profitable, whatever. Because the more we praise them, the more they work now for what? For the praise. And now they have to have more, and it becomes just like any other addiction. I hesitate even to give specific statements of praise, knowing that when I was a student, I tended to take such compliments as imitation love rather than as a means of improving performance. Although I do hope to improve students' motivation, the bigger concern is the impact my interactions have on them. I cringe at the thought that I have been, by the way, every word that you're saying as a piano teacher could apply equally to teachers of every ilk. So if you're listening and you don't happen to teach piano, I wouldn't blow this off because this is about all of us in all of our capacities as teachers, whether we be parents, whether we be supervisors at work, whether we be teachers in a public school. If you're in any position where it's your responsibility to influence, motivate, inspire, improve the people around you, you're a teacher. I cringe at the thought that I have been pushing kids who are already drowning even further under the water. But by becoming irritated, that's exactly what I've been doing. Oh, bless your heart. Ooh, I'm amazed at your honesty because, as I said, most teachers, supervisors blame those stupid kids or those employees or whoever, rather than saying, I have had a negative influence on them, which is almost invariably true. I've been conflicted over what action to take. It seems that anything I do at this point will be artificial and ultimately ineffective because my behavior is coming from a place of strategy rather than genuine love. Very nicely said. The obvious solution is to get more unconditional love myself, but this takes a great deal of effort and will not come overnight. So what can I do to help the students in the meantime? So brilliantly, you have identified the behaviors that don't work. Bribing, praising, irritation. The whole problem with those approaches is that they often do work in the short term. So if a student is behaving badly and I grab a piece of half-inch rebar and smack him over the head, he probably will be quiet for a short period of time, mostly because he's unconscious. But these things appear to have a salutary or positive effect. And so we think, if I do this once and it works, maybe if I do it again, it will work. And if it doesn't quite work then we figure, maybe I'll do it harder or more. Actually, all you do is get deeper and deeper into the pit of imitation love and getting and protecting behaviors. It's just horrible. So you've identified some things that don't work and wisely identified that simply being more loving yourself, which would come as a result of getting more love, would be also beneficial. So in the short term, what do? And all of these things work better as you feel more loved. So keep in mind that anytime I say, well, now you might try this, anything that we try or say or do that comes from an unloving place isn't very likely to work. So with that context, people tend to do what is fun, and they tend to be willing to do anything for somebody who genuinely cares about them. So there's a big key to teaching. What can you do to make it fun? Oh my goodness, so many things. We figure if we just shove the material down their throats that they'll like it. They'll like it in piano, for example. The child plays a piece poorly. And you say, now listen carefully to how you play it. And then, they play their piece haltingly and with mistakes and no expression. It's awful. And then you say, in fact, it would be really beneficial if you'd record it. You can do that with a little handheld $79 digital recorder and not even have tapes to fool with. So you play the way the student plays it, and you say, now, listen to this. And then you play it and say, which of those two renditions was more interesting, funner? How did you feel when you heard the second version? Lots of different questions that you can ask. And the student, any student can say, well, it was funner hearing it the way that you did it. You might also even, like, for example, take a popular song off the radio and interject pops and clicks and breaks in the music and pauses and distort the playback so that it sounds awful. Play it the smooth way first, the way that he knows, and then play it the terrible way and say, now, what's the difference between these two? And then you make your point in a kind way. The difference is practice. The reason you couldn't play this popular piece is because you never practiced it and learned the music. The people who play these pieces practice them over and over and over again until, rather than just hearing a series of successive notes, we hear musical expression. That's why you like to listen to this. And in fact, very often they'll do 10, 15, 20 recording takes in a studio and even pick the best of those. So that's how much it matters that we do a thing well, because it's enjoyed more. Then if you read, see, that makes it much more fun. Then that's so much easier to hear and makes so much more sense and is so much more fun to hear than to just say, you didn't practice this week, did you? Because I've heard that approach. You need to practice more next week. Boring. Give them a reason. So it's more fun. And then you might actually show them an illustration of that. So rather than just say it's obvious you didn't practice, you might take, and by the way, this applies to everything else. I'm giving you an example of piano playing, but it applies to parenting and all the other ways that we teach. You might take a little passage that out of, let's say they played a 3-minute piece. And you might take just a single phrase, musical phrase of several measures that communicates a particular musical thought. Have the student play it in their usual terrible way, and again, record it, and then practice it with the student right there, over and over. Rather than just go through the whole piece and go wrong, 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 flat, sharp, stupid, wrong. We don't benefit from that. Then show them, practice that one little phrase until they can do it close to perfectly. Which, if it's just a small phrase and you do it with them right in a lesson, you can usually do in relatively few minutes. So then you say, now, play it the way that we've just practiced, or just record several of their attempts and keep the best one. And say, now listen to the difference between the way you first played it, all broken and awful, and compare it to the way you played it the last time. The way you played it. What this does is, this isn't praise. You don't say, oh, gee, good job. No, you play it the sucky way, and you play it the good way, and you say, do you hear the difference? Well, you made that difference. You make it all about them. So how do you feel about the second version? Well, and usually they light up. Well, I liked it. It sounded better. It's certainly more fun to play a thing correctly than it is to pause every third note and go and scratch your head and go, what was that's awful. That's no fun for the kid either. So lots of different ways that you can motivate kids, and that's just a couple. And then, the bottom line again is you made that difference, and practice will get you to this for the entire piece, or to where you can play music like you hear on the radio. Obviously it's on the piano. You're comparing it to different kinds, but you get that feel that the reason people listen to music is to elicit an emotional response. That's what you're looking for in your own playing. So cool things you can do to make practicing fun for a kid. And in that whole experience, you have to be kind. You have to be doing it for their benefit, as opposed to, I'm irritated when you play the wrong note. Why should he care? Why should a 10-year-old kid care whether you're irritated by the wrong note? In fact, he might want to play more wrong notes. This viewer says, in a relationship where two people are reaching for real love, opening themselves up to be vulnerable, honest, and true, where do I draw the line between what is healthy and what is unhealthy? Pretty vague question. We'll get to more specific clues here in a minute, I'm pretty sure. I know inner growth can be painful when awarenesses occur, but it's worth it. But what is healthy growth compared to dysfunctional growth? What you said so far is a manifestation of it's a fear of clearly stating what the problem is. Hopefully we'll get to where it's clear. Most people are afraid to clearly state a problem because they look stupid, because they'll be embarrassed, or because they'll be attacking somebody else. I'm not talking about someone being blatantly disrespectful or unappreciative. So now we're talking about your boyfriend. But still, obliquely, my partner is very sensitive, kind, and caring. Now, before I go on, that's impossible. If your partner were sensitive, kind, and caring, we wouldn't be talking about this letter, would we? But we have a tendency, so that we don't look critical, to say, well, my partner's very loving, he loves me very much, he's kind and sensitive. And I'm not exaggerating when I've heard people say that and then say, but occasionally he beats me. Well, then he's not kind, sensitive, and caring, is he? Everything gets more productive, everything gets clearer when we just tell the truth. And we don't have to do a preamble of all these words. So you're having a hard time just clearly describing this problem. Still haven't yet. Where we differ is when it comes to comfort zones. He's continually taking issue with my outgoing nature. There, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. And you got to the problem. My boyfriend has an issue with my outgoing nature. I'm a tactile person. I love being around people, the social butterfly, as it were. I like talking to them. I like touching them. He, on the other hand, can easily become a hermit and is threatened by social behavior, particularly with men around. Don't get me wrong. I don't fall over anyone or cuddle up to the opposite sex. I do, however, engage in conversation and become an animated part of the discussion. If someone lets out a joke, I easily slap their back and, say, well, good one. So you like getting involved. My partner is uncomfortable with this. But this is who I am. This is how I respond to the world. I'm not attempting to put the moves on anybody. And he's a good man, and I do love him. How do I extend my love without giving myself away? So, first, he's a good man, but pretty much I assume that everybody has good intentions, but that's not enough. How we behave matters. So you're saying he can be nice to you, but then he expects to control who you are. And unless that is addressed and unless it changes, to continue a relationship with somebody who tries to control you will be everlasting hell if you keep it up, because he'll keep trying to control you. It's very likely, certain essentially from what you've said, that he doesn't know how to connect with other people. You know how to connect with them at least on a superficial social level. It's pretty obvious that you have a harder time connecting deeper than that because you have a hard time even describing problems deeper than that. No criticism. It's just the way it is. And because he's not able to connect with other people, what he expects is for some significant other, an exclusive partner, to come along, and I've seen this many times. This exclusive partner will come along and provide all the happiness in his life. Now, can you see the conflict? Here's this guy who's starving to death, and along comes somebody who says, well, I love you. Oh, it's like a death sentence for you, because he reaches out with grasping hands, grabs you, and will never let you go. He will demand that you satisfy every need. He'll demand that you be there with him all the time. If you do anything that shows attention toward other people, he would naturally be jealous of that, because he lives in a world where imitation love is gathered, hoarded, manipulated, protected, counted. And if you're giving any attention to somebody else, he does the math. It's very simple. Let's see. I needed 10 units, and if she's giving 2 units to somebody else, 10 minus 2, I'm only going to get 8. Well, in real love, there is no math like that. There's an infinite supply. But in imitation love, it is a limited supply. And we do compete for it, just like food. So he couldn't tolerate your paying attention to other people. And over time, it tends to get worse. You can't pat people on the back. You can't talk about certain subjects. You can't leave the house when he needs you to be there. You can't take phone calls. He'll monitor your email, your voicemails, your text messages. I'm not exaggerating. This is where this goes. And eventually, you'll end up feeling like you are a prisoner. So it's something that absolutely must be addressed. Relationships only work when, and it's something you're going to have to address with him. Relationships only work when your partner accepts who you are. And, the fact that you're quite different from him, no problem. In fact, it's the differences that create a fun relationship. You really want a partner who complements you, not compliments with an I, but complements with 2 E's, as in balances out, supplies what you don't have. Well, of necessity, if you want to be a greater whole and want to find somebody who balances out what you have, they would have to be somewhat different from you, wouldn't they? So you can see what he's doing is he really enjoys your ability to give love. He loves that. But he wants to be able to have it on a rheostat. Turn it up, turn it down, and certainly lock it up. That doesn't work, because he's not accepting who you are. He's accepting who you are with him. It's pretty limited. And if he wants something other than who you are, well, no problem. But then he needs to find it somewhere else, because that's not you. I can't imagine that you would enjoy being controlled for the rest of your life. On the other hand, now that would be me speaking to him. On the other hand, for your part, there's often a tendency of people when they're being controlled to say, well, I just want to be me. I just have to be me. I've heard that countless times. Well, not quite. Because even though it's important that both of you accept the other as they are, part of being in a partnership is adjusting and giving in ways that you wouldn't have perhaps thought of before. So it's not about, I have to be myself. It's, what can I do to be a loving partner? So let's say, for example, that his requests are, because I'm guessing that if I were to ask him, his request for the ways for you to be different would be numerous. But let's say that one of his requests is, well, I don't like it when you spend time with other people at parties. Well, if I were in a partnership with somebody like that, tough. Now, I wouldn't say tough, but being with other people at a party is, what do you go to a party for? If I was just going to spend time with you, then I would stay at home. The whole idea of going to a party is to spend time with other people at the party. And yet, possessive, controlling people are bothered by that. Just irritates the trash out of them. Now, the loving thing you could do would be to say, well, we're going to a party. And we go to a party to be around other people, and so I will be spending time with other people. However, I will also be paying attention to you. I will be coming by in the party every 10 minutes or whatever, I'm making these numbers up, and touching you and looking into your eyes and asking you how you're doing. Now, the thing is, he will expect that if you're having fun at the party and he's not, you should somehow change your behavior. Wrong. He doesn't like being at parties. So it's a given that being at a party will be a less enjoyable thing for him than for you. Well, I'll be darned. As two people in a couple go anywhere, almost invariably, one person will enjoy that activity more than the other. That's part of being in a partnership there, sweetie. So he may not be having as good a time. Or you could say to him, look, if you really hate being at these parties, one of the options is you could stay home. If you hate them that much, don't go. But I do like to go. And when you tell me I can't have fun, I can't touch people, I can't... you're asking me not to be me. Now, I'll make allowances. I'll come and talk to you and touch you more often at a party than I would anybody else. Or, for example, let's say he makes a request that you never have contact with ex-partners, an ex-husband, an ex-boyfriend. That's a pretty reasonable request. It gets pretty confusing when we continue to touch, look at, and have a lot of social contact with ex-partners. So see, that's the kind of thing that you might, have a tendency to say, well, that's just who I am. I stay in touch with my ex-partners. Well, certainly not essential. You can certainly continue to be who you are, outgoing, touching, looking, all that, without doing it with ex-sexual partners, for example, which can be a bit threatening to almost anybody. So I guess what I'm suggesting is, yes, he does need to accept you as you are. He absolutely must stop controlling you. He's got to do it. And you're going to have to help him see when he is doing it. Controllers have been doing this for so long and take it as so much their right to do in life that most of the time they don't even see that they're doing it. So he does need to accept you. You're going to need to help point out when he's controlling you. But for your part, you're going to need to go out of your way to do extra loving things as he's learning not to control. So you both have a role here, and really a very important role. But the reason he has to see this is that even if you become more and more unconditionally loving, and he's just a controller and isn't willing to address this behavior, he won't feel loved by you, no matter how much you give him. He'll just say, well, there's one more thing, and one more thing, and it will never stop till you're a prisoner in chains at the foot of his bed. My grandmother says this viewer, is an extremely controlling, we just talked about controlling, an angry woman. Nothing is ever good enough in her eyes. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, and the first time, because I wanted to, I went to visit her in the hospital. The second time, I went only because I felt obligated to, because she was persistent over and over with phone calls and messages from other people in the family that I come back and see her. In fact, she persisted that I come and see her in the hospital every day. See, this is the problem with controllers. When I control you and you give me what I want, it'll never be enough. I'll just think of something else I want. It's received as imitation. So, controllers are addicts. It's never good enough. It never will be good enough. And so simply loving them unconditionally is not enough. At some point, even though we're trying to love them better all the time, they have to see it. Now, that's in a couple relationship. We'll see if this applies to your grandmother. She was persistent that I come every day, but I called her after my second visit, and I told her that I would not be able to make it. That was 2 months ago. A month ago, she called and left a message about our doing lunch together, but I never called her back. I hate calling her back because she always starts out on the phone with something like this. Oh, so you do know how to use the phone. I thought you forgot how. And you don't enjoy that? Whenever I think of calling her and having to sit through all that, I feel angry and resentful. And so what you have only naturally done, because she's attacking you and controlling you, so what you've chosen to do is just to avoid the whole situation and have no relationship with your grandmother at all. So part of it is that she's angry and controlling, but that's not the whole deal, because if you were sufficiently loving, it wouldn't bother you that she talked to you like that. So the other reason that you don't have a relationship with her is what? You. It's you and who you are. You don't feel loved enough so that when she attacks you, you won't feel threatened. And partly that's because you haven't been loved enough all your life, probably by your parents, come on, this grandmother raised one of your parents, and so you probably not felt sufficient unconditional love all of your life. And partly you feel threatened because you feel lost. You feel out of control. When she comes at you, controllers are masters. Oh, they've been practicing all their life. They know just the thing to guilt people and manipulate them. Defending against that can be very difficult. And so you feel like, well, what do I say? So you don't know what to say. You're afraid to say the wrong thing. You're afraid to hurt her feelings. You're afraid if you hurt her feelings, then she's going to go and talk to your mom, dad, great aunts, third cousins, the planet, and they're all going to criticize you. So you're paralyzed by fear with this lady. So what do you do? As you know, obviously getting more love is a major solution, because the more loved you feel by many people, then when this one angry woman doesn't love you, it won't bother you. You don't need her to love you. You don't need her approval. And because you don't need her approval, you're not afraid of her disapproval. But you are now, which actually proves that you do need her love. We have to give up needing real love from any particular person. And then another thing you can do is to just see her differently. You tend to see her as an angry, critical monster. And from the outside, that's just exactly what she looks like. I mean, movies are replete with people like this. The lonely, angry, older person who just snipes at everybody and nobody appreciates me and nobody comes to see me in the hospital. And then the more they act like that, the more people avoid them. They don't realize that's the natural consequence, but that's what happens. So really, she's not a monster. She's just alone. She's miserable. She's been manipulating people all her life, and even when she gets what she demands, she doesn't feel loved because she manipulated people to get it. So she's alone, desperate. That really changes the way that we feel toward people when we see them as lonely and desperate rather than trying to hurt us. And then it could also really be helpful to you if you put somebody in a situation they've never been in before. They've never spoken in public, and you stick them up in a public speaking assignment. Oh, scary. Or they've never skateboarded before. And, you throw them on a skateboard at a 30-degree downhill angle, terrified. So often, just understanding and knowing what to do or say can help eliminate a lot of your fears. Preparation leads to the elimination of fears. So we could just talk about a few of the things that you could say, keeping in mind that you're feeling loved is still the most important thing, kind of like the teacher I was talking to earlier. You need to feel loved, that's most important, but there are some things you could do and say in the short term that would help you at least not feel so out of control. Now, keep in mind, I'm just giving you one or two possibilities. There are thousands of potential responses. But let's say that that you call and she says, "Oh, so you do know how to use the phone. How come I haven't heard from you in so long?" Look, you got nothing to lose. You've already got a distant to no relationship with her. So it might help you, at least for your own confidence, so that you felt more assured to know that you can say things like, Grandma, which would you rather do? We have two choices here. And you have to say it calmly. If you're irritated, you're dead. We have two choices. We could continue a pleasant conversation about how you're doing and what I'm doing and just light up our days. That would be one choice. The second possibility is that you could continue to attack me and criticize me for not calling you up to this point, in which case our conversation will last for probably about 10 seconds longer. So which of those two would you rather do? Now, I've seen and heard a lot of these, so I'm quite aware that at that point she will very likely, certainly defend herself and say something along the lines of, well, either you don't have to talk to me like that, or parents have all of these, memorized. It's almost like stock phrases. I'll take half a phrase from column A, a little bit of B. It's like a Chinese menu. It's just amazing how rote these become. Or she'll say, well, but all I was trying to do was, she'll justify herself. At which point, you do not answer the justification. Don't get into it. She's got much more practice attacking you than you have defending yourself against her, so don't try. So when she starts that, you just say, oh, no. The choices, there was only two choices. There wasn't a third one, which would be continue to attack me. So, well, actually, that is the second one, come to think of it. There were only two choices, you say to her. We can commence having a pleasant conversation right now, or you can there is a third choice. Or you can continue to criticize my not calling, in which case we won't be talking much longer. There wasn't a third choice, which was defending your attacking. So which would you like to do? Number one or number two? And if she starts at it again, it's amazing how they just want to draw you into a fight. You just say, so would that be number one or number two? And if she keeps doing it, if she attacks you, defends you, say, hey, I look forward to talking to you again soon. Goodbye. And you hang up. She's going to catch on pretty quickly, because I've helped people do this with hundreds of relatives. She's going to catch on pretty quickly that you are not interested in participating in her guilt fest. You just won't do it. But you have to say this not offended. You can't say, I don't like it when you... No, she's not going to like that. You have two choices. That way, see, you're not telling her what to do. You might even say that. I'm not telling you not to criticize me. I'm just telling you that if you do, our conversation will be much shorter. She'll catch on. She will either modify the way she talks to you, or she'll quit calling you, because she actually likes guilting people. Either choice, you win. See? And this isn't the same as putting your foot down, standing up for yourself. No, those imply such an attitude of defensiveness, victimhood, anger, awful. No, You're just describing two choices for it. So freeing. You continue, I realize now that I was calling her before out of obligation and other families' stupid comments about how I should call my grandmother more often. I realize they say these things to me because they are tired of this conversation with my grandmother and they want it to end. So notice, none of them have the guts to talk to her straight, not mean, just straight. And so they let her go on and on about how you're a terrible, terrible, ungrateful grandchild. And now they want you to free them from the shackles of bondage with the grandmother. Insane. And if you die in the process, frankly, they don't care. So they tell me what to do so that their life is easier and more convenient and they no longer have to entertain this discussion, which is you not calling her, with this witch, your grandmother. So one of the possibilities is doing what I said, just stopping the conversation. Another is, and you can mix it with the first, is to always remember that we do need to be always more loving. That's something we need to be practicing at all the time. How can I be more loving toward this critical, angry person? But you only do it as you're able. So you don't have to say, okay, I'm going to be loving and I'm going to listen to her whole tirade. No. You offer her as much love as you can. And then sometimes I call it as much as you can plus one. So you go, oh, I think I could only visit her about once a year. And so you decide, so to practice loving, I'll visit her twice a year. See? It's just always a little bit more. I don't think I can stand another minute of this. And you think, all right, so for one more minute, I'm going to listen and practice being loving. But when you get to the end, when you realize, this is becoming stressful for me. I'm not feeling loving anymore. You're done. Now, you practice so that you can be more loving the next time, but if you go visit her just because she's guilted you, are you going to go with a free heart and a free spirit and be loving? No. Is she going to feel it? No. Well, what's the math there? 0 plus 0 is 0. Nobody wins. So you do the best that you can. And you don't have to listen to the rest of the family. The rest of the family's opinions about how you should love your grandmother are meaningless. It's pretty obvious they don't know you very well anyway. So their opinion about what you are capable of doing is kind of ridiculous. It'd be like me giving swimming lessons to a dolphin. You said, she called me about 4 days ago and told me that I had a piece of mail from my credit union, which I know is junk mail because they send everything important to my present address. She said that it says on the envelope that they need a response by the 21st of this month. She's very clever. She's just going to stick anything in the door that she can to get a little bit further in. And she wants to know if I want it or should she shred it, which of course is going to force you to communicate with her. She's good. Actually, it's probably just a piece of junk mail. It has nothing to do with you. Probably has the neighbor's name on it, but she's going to use it to get you to call. I know she's empty and doesn't feel loved, and honestly, I just don't care. I don't love her, and it feels good to not lie about it. I like certain things about her sometimes, but I don't love her. You know, that is so delightfully honest, it should be framed. You don't love your grandmother. Well, okay, that's just the truth. I believe you. Very cool. So you can see that you don't. Now, the part that you'll be happier with is if you also say, I don't love my grandmother. I don't care whether she lives or dies. Just say that. Tell the truth. However, I would like to learn to love her better, bit by bit. Partly because she'll benefit from you loving her, yeah, but mainly because our settling for being unloving is unhappy for us. So many of the greatest blessings in my life have been learning to love people who have not been loving toward me. Those are, after all, the real trials, aren't they? I mean, if I can love the people who are just nice to me, so anybody can do that. Well, actually, not anybody can. But the best trials, the best practice is loving people who are not loving. So she's a great practice opportunity for you. which doesn't mean you have to do it perfectly all at once. Relax, like we talked about. You said, my mom is going to our house at Christmas, and I'm going to buy her a Christmas card because I want to. Good for you. And send that over with my mother to give to my grandmother. So you have this is a great illustration, actually. You have just enough love for your grandmother to send her a Christmas card, but have somebody else deliver it. Fine. That's where you start. As opposed to, I think I'll just go stay with her for a week, which would probably kill you. Other than that, I have no desire to see her this holiday season. Okay. And see anybody then who comes along and says, well, but you should see your grandmother. They're not paying attention to what you're capable of and what you're learning and who you are. They're not listening. They're telling what you ought to do without understanding you. I'd love to hear any recommendations that you might have as about dealing with her in the future. So we're just back to what I was saying. Give what you want. Push it a little bit so that you can learn. But just watch for when you're reacting out of anger and fear and learn from those occasions. And you'll do oodles better. Makes all the difference just to feel free of not having to respond to guilt every time it comes along. This viewer says, my 12-year-old son Louis didn't want to do his daily chore, which is walk the dog, because it was too cold outside. But kids are amazing. But later the same day, he wanted to go sledding on a nearby hill. And then you get the joke because you continue. I know, it's too cold to walk the dog, but it's not too cold to sled on the hill. Yeah, I know. It's not the cold that bothers him. He's allergic to work. And it's not fun. I said that he couldn't go sledding until after the dog was walked. Perfect. What a great consequence. Often people picture consequences as punishments. And so if you don't walk the dog, then we'll chain you to your bed and you'll be grounded for 2 years. That's not a consequence. That's a beating. And it's not really related to the offense. Hey, in our house we made it simple. You work before you play. So people would come and they'd say, can I go too? And we would just have you done your work? Which they knew meant your listed chores on the board. Everybody had a set of chores. Have you done your homework? And if you've done your work, well then go play. I want you to play. I'm not trying to keep you from playing, but if you haven't done your work, why are you asking me this foolish question? Because you know the rule. And if you do that consistently, they don't ask you anymore. It's great. Kids didn't come and ask me anymore. Well, I know I haven't done my work, but I want to play. Sometimes I go, oh, what? I don't understand you. Because the question doesn't even make sense. They know the rules. And the whole reason they engage you in silly conversations like that is because you've had them in the past and often caved to their desires. So he walked the dog for about 2 minutes. Walked him to the end of the driveway. I said he needed to walk the dog again and told him specifically the route to take. See, that's walking the dog. You have to walk the dog half a mile or whatever it is, to Minnesota and back. Whatever, you have to be clear. He came in again after 3 minutes saying, kids are just great. They're brilliant and creative when it comes to avoiding work. Not nearly so brilliant and creative when it comes to other things. He said that he couldn't... he came in after 3 minutes saying, the dog didn't want to walk. You can imagine the conversation between boy and dog. Do you want to walk? No, huh? Well, I guess we ought to go back in then. Pretty cold, isn't it? And so you can do whatever you want. I mean, there's different ways of responding to that. Lots of natural consequences. But, you could either say, well, then fine. Then I would have told a kid who came in after 3 minutes, I'd say, fine, then you can go sledding for 3 minutes. And instantly, the kid will get the point. The kid will go, oh. Now, they often do it with a sigh and like, I hate it when you do that. But, if you're going to walk the dog for 3 minutes, then you can go sledding it isn't even worth getting dressed to go sledding for 3 minutes. So you tell him every minute you're with the dog, you can go sledding. Although if the dog walks normally only 30 minutes, then you say, so if you walk the dog for 30 minutes, then you can sled for as long as you want. Up to you. But it's minute for minute up to the 30 minutes. You pick. And see, now you're always giving them a choice. You're not telling them what to do. You're saying, don't walk the dog then. But you walk the dog for 2 minutes, you sled for 2 minutes. There's your choice. All in your control. See how you're not nagging now? You're not saying you should do this, you shouldn't. No, it's the kid's choice. And if he says, well, the dog doesn't want to walk, fine. Then go out and stand outside in the cold for 30 minutes. Even dogs are smart enough to realize that if you stand in the cold for 30 minutes, then they start walking because it warms them up. Dogs have figured that out. Or carry the dog. I don't care. Which sort of defeats the dog walking thing, but it does get across the child thing. So I got dressed, you said. I offered to the child that he could go walk the dog and do it with me. So we'd both go walk the dog. Interesting solution. That might be worth doing a time or two, not on an ongoing basis. He declined. And so I took the dog for the walk. It's one way to go too. I mean, if you do want the dog to go out, and the kid won't do it, that's kind of what's left. When I got back, he was dressed to go sledding. And I said, no, can't go sledding. He was mad at me, but about a half an hour later, he was talking to me and asking some questions about one of his friends and his homework. This is an illustration of how you apply a consequence. A lot of ways you could do it. I suggested the minute for minute thing up to 30 minutes. You chose a different route. Okay, fine. Don't walk the dog, and you went and walked the dog. I'm not suggesting either one was righter or better. You chose the one. But then you told him, oh, well, you can't go sledding because you didn't walk the dog, which is also a good lesson. But clearly you weren't angry as you applied the consequence, which is the whole goal of a consequence, to just apply it, not be mad, because 30 minutes later, he's asking you questions and talking to you. So, well, woohoo, hallelujah, you did it beautifully. And he will learn the lesson because you allowed the consequences to teach him, instead of being annoyed, in which case all he learns is that you are a monster, not a useful lesson. So nice work on that. That's really clever. And loving in this case. So we've had outstanding questions as usual. I look forward to you sending more questions to me at greg@reallove.com. And look forward to seeing you again in a week, which will be just a few days before Christmas. So between now and then, especially in this season of love, remember that it's always about real love. See you in a week.